Welcome, everyone. This is our meeting on the Town of Basalt's proposed regulations on wildfire protection. And this meeting is really geared towards the business community, but we're going to be providing some overall information on our proposed rules and regulations that we have scheduled in front of the Basalt Town Council. So we created a little working group to these before I and we up. I just kind of want to introduce everyone that was on the working committee. I'm Susan Phelp. I'm the Basalt Planning Director. We also, from the Basalt Rural Fire Protection Authority, we had John Melly, who is the fire marshal and who you can't see on the screen, and Brooke Scott. Brooke, raise your hand, who was the assistant fire marshal. From the town of Basalt, we had James Lint, the assistant planning director. Rick Fout, you'll actually see Rick's face a little bit later. He's our building official. And then from our attorney's office, we have Richard Peterson Kramer. Richard, can you raise your hand? And Richard was instrumental in helping us draft the regulations that we're going to summarize today. I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll dive into more details about the specific regulations themselves. Now, if you want to ask a question or you want to make a comment, we have a place on the agenda for you to do that. And what we would like you to do is either email planning@basalt.net or text 970-379-1514. And then during that time on the agenda, we'll look for questions. If you would like to participate by Zoom, you can email Rick Fout at basalt.net, and that email address is up on the screen. So it's rick.fout@basalt.net. Here's our informal committee that helped develop our regulations. And this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to give the background on the amendments and kind of summarize what they look like. And then John Melly and Rick Fout are going to dive into the details. Then we'll do Q&A and adjourn. And we should be done within the hour. Just to kind of ground everybody, this is what happens with fire. I don't know about you, but my heart starts beating when I see these pictures about just how close the fire was in Basalt. And here's another picture just looking from downtown.
Susan, we can't see your PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry. How do I exit this screen when I'm in here? Just 1 second while we share the screen here, so just a second. Difficulty with our Zoom and our PowerPoint here. So can everybody hear me now? Raise your hand. And are you looking at the screen that shows the fire behind Whole Foods?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So just quickly, the fires that we had in the town of Basalt. And it really led to the fire department talking to our town manager about our fire regulations and really the need to address more hardening of structures. So a couple years ago, John Melly and the fire chief talked to Ryan Mahoney, and it ended up resulting in the town of Basalt amending our strategic plan to put in our strategic plan that we would consider amendments to address fire hardening. This really came out also in the Basalt master plan. We heard a lot of input from folks really having fire protection and fire as a real concern in the town, and the need to really address access in and out in the time of fire. So our master plan also has requirements in the plan addressing the fact that we want to address requiring fire hardening. So when we looked at our fire regulations, we didn't really need to start from scratch because the town of Snowmass Village had adopted regulations in 2019 with the fire district really working hard with that community. So we used as a base what the town of Snowmass Village did, but we reorganized it and changed the regulations to really fit for the town of Basalt. So what we ended up doing is organizing the code amendments in 5 different sections of the code. Here you see we have regulations in Chapter 16 zoning, Chapter 17 subdivision, Chapter 18 building regulations, and this is where really most of the really important regulations are provided. And in Chapter 7, health, sanitation, and animals, and Chapter 13, municipal utilities. One of the really important things to understand about the town of Basalt's proposed regulations is that all of the town of Basalt is determined to be an area subject to wildfire hazards. So the regulations pertain to the entire area within the town of Basalt. There's no distinction about whether you're in the immediate area up on the hill next to the Lake Christine fire, or whether you're in Elk Run or Southside. In Chapter 16, this is our zoning chapter of the town of Basalt, and the regulations here were fairly simple. We're just formalizing the land use referral process, and then also the other item is we're kind of made a statement that we're using guidelines issued by the Colorado State Forest Service. Chapter 17 is our subdivision area of the code. This also, our proposed changes are addressing formalizing our land use application referral process. This section of the code addresses the need for adequate access. Chapter 18, this is where most of the really important building regulations are contained. And this is where we're requiring hardening of all new buildings and new additions. This is why we have a star here, because it's the most important thing of what we're trying to accomplish here. There's some other important changes. One has to do with fence requirements. So the 36 inches next to the habitable structure, it must be a fire-resistant material. Rick will get into this in a little bit more detail in a second, but this is where this can be masonry, this can be metal, this can be a wood product. It's a hardened wood product. It also includes standards for exterior doors and windows and decks and accessory structures. And it's important to note that what we're doing in these fire regulations is that we're addressing new items. It doesn't include things that are already included in our other international codes. So by way of example, in our current international codes, it addresses how big the addressing lettering has to be, and that you have to see it from the street. But the new regulations say that the lettering has to be on a fire-resistant area. And also, there are criteria about when does it take a place. So by way of example, if you have a shed that is under 200 feet, square feet, you don't have to have that as a fire-hardened material. So that means that you can still order your shed, et cetera, from Lowe's. There's also thresholds for repairs, and what we tried to do is if you're caught by our sustainable building regulations, then you're also caught by the new regulations that we're addressing here. So if you're doing a level 2 or 3 remodel, then your materials will have to be of the hard material. Another important kind of aspect of our changes to Chapter 18 is that it's going to prevail over HOA rules. So if the HOA requires wood shake shingles, our town of Basalt regulations about our fire-resistant material is going to prevail. We did build in a relief valve, so if there's unusual circumstances or there's a repair that is kicked in, like you're replacing a roof or a deck, and you exceed the threshold, but it's November, there's a relief valve built in with the technical review committee that we can review the unique circumstances for that situation. In Chapter 17, this is our chapter dealing with nuisance. This is where you find our nuisance regulations. Now, here we're kind of moving from regulations that pertain to just construction, and we're moving over to regulations that deal with pertain throughout the town. And so, in Chapter 17, this is where we're addressing the fact that you can't have wood piles in your home, and that you have to keep your lawn and fuel maintained. In Chapter 13, this is our chapter dealing with municipal utilities, and this is just providing that your meters and valves all have to be accessible to the utility companies and to the fire department. You can have your meters in an enclosed area, but you can't have any gate or lock that would prevent you from having access to that. In terms of our schedule, we had a work session on Tuesday, July 28th, and then on August 4th, our P&Z reviewed and made a recommendation and unanimously recommended approval. Our first reading is Tuesday, August 11th, and our second reading is scheduled currently for August 25th. And I believe our effective date for our regulations is September 17th. And so this is when the new regulations would take effect under our current schedule. And of course, you know, the council could always continue one of the meetings or hearings, so that effective date could change. Skip the next slide, James. This is a good place to pause because I kind of jumped right into the regulations, but I didn't really give the fire department an opportunity to really give us their viewpoint of why these regulations are so important to the community and what we're trying to accomplish. So if we could, if John, you could kind of jump in and give us some more background about why you think this is important to the town, that would be great.
So, to start, I apologize. I just cannot get my camera to work. So I hate working in the dark on you like this, but I tried everything. So I'm just going to proceed in the dark here. First of all, this is not a new topic for Colorado. And perhaps you've seen most of these wildfires on the Front Range for years. But as our drought seems to be taking hold, the studies show that this is not just a forest health problem, it's actually a structure problem as well. And if you look at the counties, Eagle, Pitkin, if you look at the towns, Aspen, Snowmass Village, these codes are very similar to what building contractors and architects have been used to for years. We just think that the conditions that determine whether a house ignites or not can all be solved within 100 feet of the home. So our hardening codes are designed to fortify the roof roof coverings, the vents, gutters where debris and leaves can collect. You have to think like an ember here, because this is how most homes ignite during a wildfire. It's usually through an ember shower. The other parts of the hardening of the structure are, of course, exterior walls, the decking materials, and near-home landscaping. The roof is going to arguably be the most vulnerable area of the home, and it's the largest surface. In studies that we've researched also, is this is probably the most costly of the upgrades, but when worked out from the very beginning design function, and the architects know this is the method that they're going as a Class A roof covering, the costs seem to even out and may even help with the longevity and maintenance of the structure for years to come. So we think it's a way out balance. The building contractors out in the community will certainly know the costs involved, maybe much more than we do. We can just go by studies, but that's why we're doing this presentation, so that we can get your feedback. We think it's necessary for the town of Basalt to upgrade their codes and just be current to help the firefighters in their efforts should another wildfire occur in the area. With that, I'm open to questions as well, Susan.
Okay. Well, we don't have any questions yet sent to us from email or text. So maybe this is a good opportunity for us to have Rick Fout, who's our building official, kind of go through some more of the details. And just to kind of acknowledge that we were having trouble with our PowerPoint. So Rick's going to take my place over here, and James is going to continue running the PowerPoint. So Rick, the next slide.
Hi guys, can y'all see me and hear me? Brooke, can you see me and hear me?
I can see and hear you. You're good.
Awesome.
You're good.
Well, kind of like John had the luxury to do, just kind of drop in at a viewpoint. You know, why are we here? Why do we think these fire-wise proposed codes might be a good idea? There may or may not be a climate change. We have been seeing bigger threats from fire and water. And I'm here to kind of just give you a little bird's eye view of how these fire codes will affect us. It's not too onerous, John likes to say. And I kind of had to look that one up, honestly. It means oppressively burdensome. And I caught on to that because as I analyzed what's being proposed and the way we're building stuff presently, it's a very small shift. To go hardening of our homes, our roofs and soffits and eaves and walls. It's not too big a leap. So I'm going to start right away with the roofs. You know, Class A. It's the cream of the crop, highest caliber and most fire resistant. You know, it's being used on tons of homes, especially when you consider metal as one of the biggest ones that complies there. Got a lot of metal roofing. And good old asphalt shingles can be made at that higher rate at a Class A, and those are very popular as well. So, like I said, that one's kind of an easy one to achieve. We're even,
Yep, right there.
we're even more than halfway there on the roofs. Gets us straight into the eaves and the overhangs coming down from the top of a building. Those are those areas up there where the gutters hang. You know, cementatious board, which is a composite fiber, woods and cements, and grained to look just like wood, are already probably the largest used material in that area and comply perfectly. So again, not too huge a leap there on the overhangs. I want to point you guys to some reading there on our website at the top of the building page of our website, basalt.net. I've done a comparison and a comparison and a commentary, kind of reading between the lines of all these suggested, proposed, amplified codes to harden the homes and structures and to make them more fireproof. So I would direct you there. Most of it's up on the screen right now, but you can go back to the website on the building page at the top and dig deeper into it. Looking at my own notes here and that you're seeing in red, I think I've covered the eaves, gutters and downspouts. Once again, back to what John likes to use, his high vocabulary, not too onerous there either. About the only ones that won't comply would be the vinyls and the plastics, and that's in the minority anyways of what's used, maybe more in a commercial setting now and again, and we won't be able to continue to go there if we adopt these new proposed fire-wise hardening of the homes and structures codes. We'll have to stick with the stuff that we see mainly, and that's galvanized metals comply, coppers and aluminum gutters all comply. The one thing that we will insist in the new proposed codes, if they're adopted, is that all the gutters get the screening or the leaf guards. And you can read there or on the website of this commentary that I've done a little more about that. Most residences in Colorado where we've had wildfires, I don't know if you guys heard about the one that ripped through here. They called it Christopher or Christine or something. It's kind of like the pandemic that you'll start to hear about now too. It's all big news. But that screening and the keeping of debris and leaves from accumulating in the gutters is a smart idea. Most homeowners and commercial buildings, property management folks are retrofitting everything with that already. So again, not too big a leap. We're a long ways there already. We just have to focus a little more and shift slightly. The exteriors, walls and the sidings, one of the biggest surfaces of a building, kind of like the roof. And again, it's pretty wide open. A lot of the things we're already using, like the cementatious board that is suggested around the eaves and soffits to accomplish the hardening that looks like wood and is very maintenance free, is a great material to use on your walls if these codes do get adopted. They even have the shingled gable look that is so popular in a product that is hardened. I researched that and some others, like the metal roofing that's getting used more on walls recently in the trend of architecture that we're seeing. And you can study my note there about a building over in the residential area of Willits. That is a great example of that. If you want to go somewhere close by and see this stuff in action already, like I said, we only have to shift a little and focus a little more to accomplish this hardening that we think might be a good idea. Moving on, the vents. That's going to sound a lot like the gutters. The vinyls and the plastics and the screenless ones are the ones that won't comply anymore, but are already hardly used. Everybody's aluminum, galvanized metal, and copper, and screened already. There is a fire-rated vent available for eaves and crawl spaces. It's a little more expensive, and you'd get extra credit for using it in the event we adopt all these codes. The normal vents that aren't vinyl or plastic but are aluminum and screened, we'll get it done and we'll quench the code. But there are fire-rated ones out of even higher resistant materials that have flaps that close sensed by immense heat like a fire. So it's a little more automated, a little more maintenance, and a little more expensive, but there are not miles and miles and miles of venting on many buildings. So it would be a fine upgrade to do, but the normal vents that we're mostly seeing already comply. Exterior doors are something we're going to want to have more hardened and less susceptible to fire. But again, and this is starting to sound a bit like a broken record, to quench the energy code, we have to use a pretty high caliber entry door anyways at the time being. And most of those can be made to also quench this fire-wise hardening of the structure's code if we adopt it. Things like wooden on the inside, clad on the outside in metal, and with some sections of glass, comply perfectly in our in the majority of what's getting used at the front doors and the other entry doors. Other popular ones are solid wood types. Very nice presentation, and because they're thick and they're solid, they burn slow and they comply to be fire resistant. I'll back up to some of the sidings that would work on your walls too. For instance, over in the Roaring Fork Club, the thick, flat sawn log, its siding look can also be made to comply. Masonries like stuccos and stones and bricks perfectly comply to the fire-wise hardening of the wall surfaces. I've jumped a little bit on us from the doors back to the walls a little bit, just to punch my point home. Decks, it's pretty obvious that the standard fire-resistant type of all wood materials aren't going to make it anymore. We could go all the way to some of the higher-end modern anodized aluminum with metal framing, all metal framing, super attractive, super easy to work with, has systems that click right into it and achieve the cabled railings, glass railings, and that would be kind of at the top of that pyramid of making the decks more fire resistant and hardened. You can easily use a fire treated wood. Unfortunately, it is not weather treated presently. That might be coming out in the future as a building material, both fire and weather treated, but right now there's a wood that looks just like any of your decks or fences that are made of wood, and it happens to be fire treated, and it's a pretty good alternative to quench the hardening and the fire resistance that would be required if we shift to these fire-wise codes on your decks. You can still have a wood look. The Trex product, the composite plastic fiber decking that a lot of folks, builders and homeowners have shifted to because it has the wood look and the low maintenance and the good feel on the feet, etc. That one is going to take over, I think, a lot for anything wood anymore because it quickly gets us fire hardened and fire wise. This is also going to take effect on any of the accessory buildings, your sheds, your playhouses, anything within 50 feet of your primary structure. And it's going to have to look a lot like your primary structure with the Class A roofings, metals, high-end fiberglasses, with your hardened surfaces on the walls, the cementatious siding, the metal sidings, the thick look that is thick enough to be fire resistant and slow burning. So you can achieve just about any architectural style with just a little more focus and with just a little shift and a little amplification, which is kind of what these codes are. We were keen not to repeat anything that's already in the codes, but to only state and to go towards where we're proposing to enhance the codes and amplify the codes to be more fire-wise. Fences, as Susan already touched on, would have to, and I'll explain, because they work like a fuse and transfer fire, fuse-like, from building to building. They've seen that in the films of other fires in Colorado Springs and areas that aren't too unsimilar to our area. The fences are wicks from home to home, to your neighbor's place, to your garage and outbuilding, and then back to your place, around the yard, and back. So we're looking at going 36 inches away from the wall with metal or stone or the cementatious to look like wood, long-lasting, maintenance, almost free type of material would work there as well in that 36 inches next to the wall of the structure. We've got to get away from the overhangs above. and away from the walls that, are habitated by folks. I think at least 36 inches to be effective. So that's why that one lives that way. Fuel tanks, we don't see a lot of them in residential basalt. We see a little in rural basalt, and we see even more in commercial basalt. But in the commercial settings, we're already burying them and or enclosing them in a fashion that meets this more fire-wise treatment of the tanks that we do have, that we are subject to. And I just think it's a good idea to almost limit or deter these tanks in new construction residentially. And this will do a good job of doing that. Or if you just have to have it, it has to be pretty special and buried or enclosed and contained, etc. Go to the website at the top of the building page, and you can read into all of these a lot further than I'm just giving us this bird's eye view today and right now. Susan touched on a simple one, but an important one, like the address identification of buildings. And she stated that, it's already in the code about the size, the color contrast, the visibility from the street, but now we're just amplifying and not restating any of the codes that already exist. And we're trying to go with, if we adopt these new fire-wise hardened codes, to require that the letters themselves be fire-resistant, retardant, and be mounted on fire-resistant types of surfaces, which, if we're hardening the walls and those numbers are going on the porch, happens organically. If we're going out on posts, they couldn't be wood anymore. They would have to be aluminum to look like wood, perhaps. And you see a lot of them up in Aspen Junction on rocks and stones out of brass. And again, it's proving that we don't have to go too far here. We're already mostly to a fire resistant, hardened building technique around our houses and out on our addressing monuments and stuff. Just a little more focus to take it just a little bit further. And lucky me, I'm to the end of my little bird's eye view.
So stop sharing.
If anybody in the room has any questions, John or Richard or Brooke.
Yeah, John, I was just wondering if there was anything that you wanted to kind of add to the overview that Rick gave.
I think Rick did a good job of explaining those. It is what it is, and what he explained, I believe, is taking place for the most part in the community of Basalt anyway. I think this just brings it up to where some of the new subdivisions that are coming on, such as Stotts Mill or whatever, would comply with these new regulations. It's much like your energy codes or your sustainability codes. It's a code that's built for the future. It is not retroactive. It's not an undue hardship on current conditions, but it sets the stage for future development, and I think that's an important move for us to make. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Richard, do you have anything that you would like to add or clarify or emphasize?
Yeah, I mean, you all did a great job of going through the technical details and, kind of how these different provisions are going to work. And I think just to emphasize how things are divided up into the 5 chapters, chapters 16, 17, and 18, really are going to apply prospectively to future applications, building permit applications, subdivision applications, land use zoning applications. And then chapters 7 and 13 will apply throughout the town. It would be an ongoing type of obligation to every property in town. But those will still contain some items that, I think the building community needs to be aware of, because you don't want to be building something that would be in violation of those those chapters as well. So I will leave it at that, though. Thank you.
Thank you. So really what we had programmed next are just questions and answers from us, and what we had indicated that you could text 970-379-1514 if you would like us to call you, or if you have a question, or you could email planning@basalt.net. And right now, we don't have any questions or text that have been emailed or texted to us. And I do know, I see a couple folks that are not part of our little working group here, J. Ray and Stephen. Do you guys have any questions?
Comments? Help us out here, guys. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
I'm just listening in, you know, I understand the goal. Certainly, I watched the fires last year. I'm just trying to wrap my head around. Everything seems to be. We really like the natural wood materials, especially on sidings. But I get it. I don't want to see the fires like anyone else. So just wrapping my head around it right now. That's no really comments or no really questions. Just that comment, I guess.
Great, and we really appreciated you guys joining in. John?
Hey, J. Ray?
Yeah, hey, John.
I just like to make a comment on that wood.
Yep.
You know, that was the same kind of a concern that we dealt with in Snowmass Village as well. And how we resolve that is if you build a 1 hour exterior wall and you want to put wood on the outside, we were good with that.
Okay.
We tend to go with architectural feature, but if you're still building, as you know, most building codes deal with the interior out, whereas this code is saying not only do you have to put that fire resistance on the inside, that it's on the outside. So there are some options where you can use wood accents or architectural features that use wood. It doesn't have to be a complete cementitious product or metal. So I think there's some room to maneuver on that, Jay. We don't want to stifle creativity as well.
No, and that's why I didn't really want to ask a whole lot of questions until I didn't want to sound as silly or stupid as I normally do. I just, like I said, just wrapping my head around it. I certainly understand the intent, and I agree with it. I just want to, make sure that there's some latitude in how we clad buildings, going forward as well. So
I'll add something to that concern if I could. Susan touched on it, and she brilliantly put into all of this a little bit of an out, whereas the fire officials, the building official, the technical review committee can get together on a case-by-case, building by building, which is our policy at Basalt. A lot of case-by-case studies that we do, and we can do that with this FireWise code if it gets implemented, and something is just a little outside of its box. She's built in that latitude, that flexibility to meet with someone like yourself, J. Ray, and hear you out, and be able to decide on a case-by-case basis with the TRC, the Technical Review Committee route, to allow it, or like John said, to change the wall to be a little more fire resistant behind the material, and that goes for the roof too. So that's what I'll add there.
And I appreciate that greatly. I think everybody will. That it's we're all trying to get to the same goal, and there are multiple paths to get there.
Just making sure you heard that we do have that little bit of escape route. I should say flexibility.
No, I appreciate that.
Flexibility is a better way to put it.
Perfect.
Well, I think our lines of communication are still open. I mean, obviously, we're throwing a lot of information at folks, and you can pull the packet up for the Basalt Town Council through the Agenda Center on the town's webpage. So for the August 11th meeting, it's item number 9A. So you can pull up the complete ordinance. Rick has put kind of a commentary on the building permit, building department page, which contains the information that we showed on the PowerPoint. And we're refining that, so if you have questions and you want us to address it, why don't you just email Rick Fout, that's probably your best bet, and we'll make sure that it gets to the right person. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and conclude. I just want to thank everybody for participating and watching on TV Grassroots. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody, and Steve and J. Ray, I want to point out Steve's a custom builder in the area. J. Ray is a architect and custom builder in the area. And you guys' input and just hearing this is huge. Thanks.
Thank you.
You guys have a nice day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We're done.
Hey, Brooke.
Yep.